Hello everyone, welcome to this video. Today we're going to be discussing the topic of assessing writing, and I suppose most of you have read the module, the chapter in our module, and um, I'm not going to be talking endlessly about this topic. I'm going to try to uh, only highlight the main points of the topic. So when we are dealing with assessing writing, we are gonna need to ask two main big questions. The first one is related to what to assess, and the second one is related to how to assess. Okay, first let's talk about what to assess, right? So what to assess? The first one is the genres of writing. All right, why the genres of writing? Because as you know, like what we have learned in the linguistics class, Introduction to Linguistics, or perhaps functional grammar class, you know that there are various types of genres of text, right? And different genre will require different um, function or different format, right? And genres of text are basically the information about the context of the text. So when we're writing a text, we're gonna need to see the context, right? There's not only text, but also uh, there's a context behind it, right? And that's the importance of knowing the genre of text that the test takers need to write. So before designing a writing task or a writing test, we're gonna need to decide, we're gonna need to define what genre of text that the test takers need to write. Okay, according to Brown, there are three types of genres of text. The first one is personal writing. Uh, Personal writing deals with things like letters, messages, diaries, fiction. So those are texts that are intended for personal purposes, right? Uh, the letters here uh, are related to personal kind of letters. So the letters that we write for our friends, for example, would be considered personal uh, type of letters. And then the next type of uh, writing would be job related. So the genres would be like announcements, and then emails, advertisements, manuals, things that are, you know, pertinent to certain type of job. That's going to be job related writing. And the last type would be academic writing. So I believe that most of you are familiar with this type of writing, with academic writing. So uh, it's the type of text that are usually written by students. I think at all levels of their academic journey, right? So students might need to write reports or essays or journal articles, things like that. But the things that we need to notice here, it's not only for students as well, right? It's also for scholars or even for teachers. So academic here is basically a topic that is related to schools or colleges, right? It's not only for students, but also for teachers or for scholars. You might imagine a class, an English language class that is intended for uh, teachers of other subjects, right? Uh, let's say an English course for math teachers. That would be pretty much practical, right? So um, you might design a test that is intended to measure their ability in writing, let's say, journal articles or maybe essays or reports related to topics in math. Okay, so those are the three types of writing that the test designers will need to understand. Okay, apart from the genres of text, test designers will also need to see the writing skills that they're gonna need to accommodate in their test. So by knowing the writing skills, they will know the objective of their test. They will know how to design a test that help the test takers to accomplish a certain objective, a certain, let's say, learning goals. So in order to do that, we're gonna need to see who the students are and what kinds of text they will need to formulate. In that case, the genres, right? And the next thing is the skills that they will need to master. The skills that they will need to master in relation to the genres of the writing. The common skills that you might already be, might have already been familiar with are skills like spelling, vocabulary, grammar, accuracy, punctuation, or even skills like, organizational skills or skills related to editing, reviewing, or revising. Such skills might be, common skills that the test designers will need to be familiar with in order to design their tests, in order to formulate their test objectives. Another taxonomy of skills that is proposed by Brown is these two groups of skills. The first one is micro skills, and the second one is macro skills. You might be familiar with bottom-up or top-down processing, right? Micro skills are about bottom-up processing. It means that we are focusing on the small aspects of the language. We're focusing on the small elements of writing. And by saying small elements, I mean things like spelling or punctuation or perhaps letters, words, things like that. So they are related to micro skills. And then another or the second type of skills, according to Brown, is macro skills. Macro skills deal with top-down processing. Top-down means, the ability of constructing or of composing text using or starting from the contextual information. So we deal with the contextual information as the primary, door, as the primary door to the writing. And the contextual information would be related to the discourse knowledge or discourse, level of analysis. It might also deal with, let's say, the communicative function of the text, or perhaps like the strategies. We might also need to assess the strategies, the writing strategies that the students are proficient with, right? Let's say we want to assess their paraphrasing skill or their summarizing skill, perhaps, or even their, let's say, ability to write paragraphs or text by organizing it in terms of the main idea and supporting details, things like that. So those are macro skills. Okay, so we have to topics in what to assess, right? The first one is the genres, and the second one is the skills, the writing skills. Okay, moving on to the next topic is how to assess. So when we're talking about how to assess, I'm going to start with the types of writing performance, and the classification that we have here is basically adopted from Brown's theory, and it's also available in the module. So we can categorize the writing performance into 4 groups. The first one is the imitative, the second one is the intensive, the third one is responsive, and the last one is extensive. They are already in order, you know. So imitative is the first one, and extensive is the ultimate one. And they are ordered in terms of the development of the writing ability. You know, when we start learning to write, we usually learn to spell words or to use punctuation correctly, right? You might you know, you might remember your experience in kindergarten or maybe elementary schools when you first learned to write. Your teacher asked you perhaps to spell words or to use punctuation correctly, right? So and that is the first stage of learning, of the first stage of writing development, right? And that first stage is reflected by this type of task, by imitative tasks. So imitative tasks are basically related to uh, things like spelling, punctuation, or perhaps formulating brief sentences, right? And imitative tasks are suitable for, you know, elementary school students or perhaps kindergarten students. Okay, the next one is intensive tasks. Intensive tasks. So intensive tasks are related to grammar tasks. I'd say sentential grammar tasks or syntactic grammar tasks. You will in this type of task, you will ask the students to write, you know, sentences or to use vocabulary in context, or um, perhaps to use collocations correctly or to use idioms, right? So that is the the second stage. After the imitative, you have the intensive, right? You have the syntactical level task, and um, this type of task is suitable for elementary school up to junior high school students, I guess. And I'm talking about Indonesian context in this case, yeah. So intensive tasks are suitable for usually elementary school students or junior school students, junior high school students, yeah. All right. And then the third type of writing task is responsive. Now, what about responsive? Um, if we refer back to the micro and macro skills, responsive here is the first stage of the macro skills, right? While the previous two, while the imitative and intensive, they're more related to the micro skills. So now we get to the macro skills, all right? So responsive is the first stage of the macro skill. Why is it macro skills? Because in responsive tasks, the task takers will deal with paragraphs. So they start to write in discourse level. They start to write paragraphs. So when you assign the students to write paragraphs, to compose paragraphs, it means that uh, you start to integrate a responsive task, a responsive task to the students. And finally, the last type of performance is extensive. It's actually a continuation of the responsive task. So extensive task is related to the final product of the writing. When you ask the test takers to write an essay, or let's say an article, a complete article, that's going to be the end product, right? That's going to be the final product of the writing. And the test takers might also uh, include processes like perhaps drafting and then editing and also revising, right, when they produce that final product of writing. And that is considered as extensive task. So it's the final product. It's a continuation of the responsive task. All right. And the next thing that we need to scrutinize about how to assess is the scoring. According to Brown, there are 3 types of scoring. The first one is holistic scoring, and the second one is analytic scoring, and finally the last one is primary trait scoring. So I guess from the names you can understand the meaning of each type of scoring, but to make things clear, I'd like to give you some examples that I've collected from your homework. So last week I've asked you to to try to find out some examples of each type of scoring, and I've selected 3 examples to represent these 3 types of scoring. So let's get to the holistic scoring first, right? So this is the, so this is the example of holistic scoring. This is an example of holistic rubric. So what is meant by holistic? As the name suggests, holistic here means like the overall impression of the writing, right? So when you try to score a writing holistically, it means that you try to get an overall impression of the writing, right? And it means that you will assign a score to the test taker's writing as a whole, as a total score. I mean, as an individual score. So you will not have multiple scores for a writing. So for example, here we have a scale of 0 to 4, from 0 to 4, and each score here represents a set of systematic descriptors, right? So there is only one score for this set of descriptions, and it means that for a writing, it will be assessed using one single score based on the description of the writing itself. So if it is 4, if they scored as 4, it might mean that the writing, the paper here, in this case, the paper demonstrates complete understanding and execution of assigned objectives and so on and so forth. So that is the way we score it holistically, right? And the way holistic rubric works. And that is the example of holistic rubric. The next type of scoring is analytic scoring. It's quite the opposite of holistic scoring. So this is the opposite of holistic scoring. As we can see here, it doesn't have a single score, but it has like multiple scores. Why is that? Because when we score analytically, uh, when we score a writing analytically, we'll usually consider uh, certain aspects of the writing. So we're going to break it down into, let's say, several elements. So you might score the writing in terms of the uh, spelling and grammar, and then you might also score it in terms of the quality of argument and so on and so forth. So the total score would be the average of all the sub-scores that you have here. So that is analytic. And in analytic scoring, usually we'll have, you know, an in-depth description of the writing. And for classroom purposes, this type of scoring would be very, very, you know, suitable for giving feedback. Why is that? Because we can be more specific compared to the holistic scoring, right? We can be more specific in informing the students of what sub skills or what aspects they're gonna need to improve, right? So that's the benefits of analytics scoring. But does it mean that holistic scoring is not good? Well, not really. So holistic scoring is usually more appropriate compared to the analytics scoring when it is used for, let's say, large scale purposes. When you have like a test like TOEFL or IELTS, usually they'll use this kind of scoring to assess the writing. Yeah, I mean the holistic scoring. They will use the holistic scoring type to assess their writing because it's a large scale test, right? And we come to the last type of scoring, and that is primary trait. Primary trait, as the name suggests, it assesses the primary function of the writing. Okay, let's get to the example here. So the scale is from 0 to 3. It means that we have a similar scoring to the holistic scoring, right? But the description that we have here is quite different. It is actually about the function of the writing. So from this example, 0 means failing to persuade the audience, while 3 means developing a persuasive argument that is well developed and supported, right? And this rubric might be suitable for assessing a persuasive writing or argumentative writing, because the primary function of argumentative writing is to persuade the audience, is to persuade the readers. And therefore, this example is used to to assess an argumentative writing in terms of its primary trait. So that is primary trait scoring. Okay, I think it makes the end of my presentation in this video. And if you have any questions, you might write it in the comment section of this YouTube video, or you might post your questions in our Schoology class. And I think that's the end of the video. See you in another video. Thank you.